A small black seamstress leaves her job at the county fair and takes a bus home. She was tired. Long working hours, difficult living conditions, poverty. All of these could have been the cause of her tiredness. But it was not her 42-year-old body that was tired, but her soul. She could not bear the discrimination they suffered. She knew in her heart that she didn't have to put up with it anymore. He was tired of not being considered a citizen as a black American citizen, of being insulted in every aspect of life. It was offensive to be forced to sit in the back seats of the bus, which he paid for like everyone else, categorized as colored, referring to black people, and when a white person got on the bus, he had to give him a seat and go standing up. She didn't yet know that one decision could change everything, but that Thursday evening, she refused to give the white-skinned man a seat. Rosa Parks. That little black woman seamstress. She sparked the long process of black American citizens standing up, gaining courage, fighting back, and finally getting their rights. Rosa Parks' courageous gesture sparked the Montgomery Bus Boycott and eventually the great civil rights struggle that continued with Martin Luther King's famous "I Have a Dream" speech. But what did Rosa Parks go through in the midst of all this struggle? And how did she live? Let's take a closer look at the life of this remarkable woman whose struggle is still a model. We would appreciate it if you watch our video to the end, like and comment. Your opinion is very valuable to us. If you are ready, here we go. Rosa Louise McCauley was born on February 4, 1913 in Tuskegee, Alabama. Her childhood was spent in the shadow of deep racial segregation in the American South. Raised by her mother, a schoolteacher, and her grandmother, Rosa was exposed to the brutal face of injustice and marginalization from an early age. Her parents knew that education was the only thing that could shield her from it all. Rosa, too, began her education in a one-room schoolhouse and continued it thanks to her mother, who fought hard for black education. But as she walked to school, she was attacked by white children throwing stones and insulting her. These challenging experiences paved the way for a greater struggle in the future. She then attended one of the few good schools that only taught black students. It was a teacher's college, and perhaps she would follow in her mother's footsteps. However, due to the successive illnesses of his mother and grandmother, he was forced to drop out of school at the age of 16. When she was 19, she married Raymond Parks, a barber but also an activist in the struggle for black rights. Raymond supported Rosa's efforts to finish high school, and she completed her studies and received her diploma the following year. Throughout her education, she learned to resist discrimination and to be self-reliant. Over the years, Rosa and Raymond Parks became respected members of the black community in Montgomery. They fought for the rights of their community to have the same rights as white people. But they lived in a state with racial segregation laws. And this meant constant struggle but also endless frustration. Black people could only attend certain schools, walk in certain parks, shop in certain stores, even drink from certain fountains. In short, they were marginalized in every aspect of life. Rosa and Raymond fought under the umbrella of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or NAACP for short. Its Montgomery president, Edgar Daniel Nixon, was a railroad worker and unionist who championed the rights of blacks who wanted to register to vote in the city. Black residents of Montgomery avoided riding the city bus as much as possible because they found the practice of being forced to sit in the back of the bus, among other discrimination, so humiliating. And yet, on a typical day, at least 70% of the passengers were black, and on that day, Rosa Parks was one of them. On a cold December evening in 1955, Rosa boarded a Cleveland bus in Montgomery on her way home from work. As the bus filled up, the driver, James Blake, told Parks to give up her seat for a white passenger. The black man sitting next to her stood up to give up his seat, but Rosa slid to the window and refused to move. She no longer wanted to submit to this injustice. "I'm not getting up," she said. The driver, James Blake, left the bus on the road, immediately found a place to make a phone call and called the police. According to the authorities, what Rosa had done was a breach of public order, and for this act she was arrested. News of Rosa's arrest spread quickly through Montgomery's black community. Although Rosa was released on bail that same evening, Edgar Daniel Nixon could see that this was an ignition that could broaden the scope of their struggle. 4 years, Nixon had been hoping to find a courageous black man of unquestioned honesty and integrity who would take sides in a case that would show them how far segregation laws could go. Rosa Parks was that person. Immediately after Nixon convinced the Parks family to make this case a battleground, they began organizing in churches with local civil rights leaders, telling their communities everything that was happening. A few days later, on December 5, 1955, they decided to launch the Montgomery Bus Boycott. That was also the day Rosa Parks was to appear in court. Rosa Parks was found guilty of violating segregation laws. Her sentence was suspended and she was ordered to pay a $10 fine and $4 in court costs. Meanwhile, black participation in the boycott was far greater than even the most optimistic had expected. The first day of the boycott went down in history as a great success. Not a single black person living in Montgomery took the bus that day. They showed their solidarity and righteousness by carpooling, walking, and bicycling. The fact that 40,000 people walked to their destinations drew the attention of everyone in the city. Following the success, local leaders decided to form the Montgomery Improvement Association to sustain the boycott and strengthen solidarity. It was at this point that another important actor in the struggle was about to come to the fore. A young Baptist preacher, Martin Luther King Jr., became the president of this new association. The 26-year-old King advocated peaceful resistance and civil disobedience. They could never be a violent movement, he said. We must discover the power of love, and when we discover it, we can make this old world a new world.
We, the Negro citizens of Montgomery, have been involved in a non-violent protest against the injustices which we have experienced on the buses for a number of years.
As the boycott continued, the anger of the city authorities, bus owners, and racists grew. During the 381-day boycott, participants were threatened, fired, and attacked. Even the homes of Nixon and Dr. King were bombed. But the violence did not deter the boycott's participants or its leaders, and the events in Montgomery became the sole topic of conversation in the state and then the entire country. In the meantime, the Rosa Parks case was appealed and cases were heard in a higher court, and the process progressed to the final point. On November 13, 1956, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that bus segregation was unconstitutional. The bus boycott then ended on December 20, 1955, one day after Montgomery received the court's written order. Rosa Parks, who was fired from her job and subjected to various physical and psychological assaults during the entire boycott, became recognized by black people all over the country as the mother of the civil rights movement. This victory, sparked by Rosa Parks and the efforts led by Dr. King, was a great source of morale for the civil rights movement and inspired similar movements in other cities. The struggle did not end here, of course. Dr. King became a national leader of the civil rights movement. In 1963, civil rights leaders decided to organize a massive march on Washington. The purpose of the march was to voice demands for jobs and freedom and to force the government to pass civil rights legislation that would bring equality to blacks. Preparations took months, and there was overwhelming support across the country. On August 28, 1963, hundreds of thousands of people gathered in Washington. It was the largest civil rights demonstration in American history. As the marchers made their way to the Lincoln Memorial, they carried banners reading, "For Jobs and Freedom." At the end of the march, Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his famous "I Have a Dream" speech to hundreds of thousands of people gathered in front of the Lincoln Memorial. "I have a dream that one day my 4 little children will live in a country where they will be judged by their character, not the color of their skin." King said in his iconic speech that still inspires hope and inspiration today. That speech became a symbol of the civil rights movement that continues to inspire people to this day. I say ongoing because this is a never-ending process. Rosa Parks' courageous action and the efforts of civil rights leaders led to the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. These laws outlawed discrimination and secured the right to vote for black people. While these were the most important victories of the civil rights movement, millions of people around the world continue to struggle against discrimination and racism. In the U.S., the struggle for equal rights for black people is far from over. Movements like Black Lives Matter keep the legacy of Rosa Parks and Dr. King alive, and the fight for justice never ends. And it never will. And Rosa Parks? After the Montgomery bus boycott, she lost her job and was constantly threatened by a group of people in Montgomery. In 1957, the Parks family was forced to move to Detroit, taking Rosa's mother with them. They started a new life in Detroit and continued their fight for civil rights there. Rosa Parks worked as a secretary in Congressman John Conyers' office, where she continued to fight for social equality and justice. Her activities in Detroit built on her past efforts and helped Rosa become a national icon. Rosa Parks dedicated the last years of her life to inspiring and educating young people. In 1987, she founded the Rosa and Raymond Parks Institute for Personal Development. When she retired in 1988, she traveled to many states to participate in civil rights struggles across the country and to support lawsuits. In 1999, he wrote an autobiographical work, My Story, in which he recounted his experiences. That same year, he was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal, the highest honor the United States bestows on a civilian. When she died on October 24, 2005, at the age of 92, she became the first woman in the history of the country to have a funeral in her honor at the U.S. Capitol. In honor of her memory and her struggle. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.